All right. So I wanted to start just, one of the things, we'll take a look back a little bit at our last session together today, but for those of you, I think there might be a few new people on the line here. I'm not entirely sure because I can't see everything while I'm in this view, but whoops, sorry. I wanted to start out, we have this kind of practice and experience, I'll just say out west here in Washington, where we kind of have this cultural thing where we talk about wins. And I don't mean win as in the competitive sort of win. In this instance, we like to, when we're building community, talk about things that we're noticing that are going well. And I thought it'd be really nice as, we're getting into our third session here together. It's always interesting to try and figure out how we all get to know each other a little bit better when we do these sorts of virtual communities of practice. But I wanted to hear and just kind of do some warm-up talking with everyone. So we're not talking at you to begin with, to hear, in your state or in your community, in your job, in your life, what are some things since we were together last that you would call a win or some sort of success in employment? I thought it'd be really nice for us to kind of get a 360 of the group and see what we're all thinking about in terms of fun, good things that are happening out there. And I'll give you just one example. I'll start by saying we just out in Washington State, our DD Council is working with the community to accept grants for our ARPA funds right now. Any kind of project that we can dream of or think about, we can apply to our DD Council right now to try and think about furthering, the effort in the community. And employment's going to be a big part of that right now. And there's a large amount of money and a lot of people having conversations about partnering together and trying to think creatively together. It's been really exciting to be in meetings where we're talking about progress and ideas and innovations and things like that. And so I'm really excited to see they've got a lot of work coming their way to review lots of proposals, but that's a big deal where they're going to broker about $50 million into our DD community in Washington State coming up. So I thought that would be something I want to keep sharing because I'm excited to see what's going to happen with that. Now just open it up. I'm not going to do a roll call here. Why don't you just, if you have something to share, jump in and make sure you share your name and share your win with us.
This is Julie Cagney. I'm with the Georgia Advocacy Office, and I'm stepping in for Sheree Mishra and Parker Gluck, who could not be here today. But along the lines of what Steph was talking about, we submitted an open record request to our Governor's Office of Planning and Budget to get a list of all of the people who had applied for the American Rescue Act funding that is coming to Georgia. And we got that list, and we're going through and identifying who are the employment providers. And the list of grantees will be announced the week of October the 18th. So we've got some time to kind of, see who gets the grants and then connect with them later about how we can incorporate competitive integrated employment with the funding that they're going to get.
Awesome. Thanks, Julie. Next.
I'll say that NDEAM is next month, which is the National Employment Awareness Disability Month. National Employment Awareness, anyway, NDEAM. And we've been working on, in our organization, we do a big month where we do all sorts of things around NDEAM. We give proclamations to people, we get pictures, we have an event, all those kinds of things. Last year we had Judy Human. Of course it was virtual, and she loves virtual events. And this year I've started to really spread news about it and tell people that to make sure that they write to ODEP and ask for, you can get posters And it's a great thing to, I mean, even though they're like just ODET posters, it's still a great thing that you can use to go face to face with an employer and say, thank you so much. I want you to have this. You might want to hang this up so people know that you are an employer. And I've gotten word back from about 15 providers around the country that I'm working with who have said, we did that. We got them. We were so thrilled. We had no idea we could get these. So I would say one of the wins is that people are starting to understand NDEAM and recognize the potential of how we can use it to expand employer engagement and awareness.
Awesome. That's cool. Who's next?
I can jump in.
Sure.
All right, this is Gina Tall, Director of Resource Development with the Disability Network, Wayne County, Detroit. And we are now an agent under the EBB, which is the Emergency Broadcast. I'm not sure what the last B stands for. But they have beefed up their policy in regard to the digital divide and have removed the limits on the texting and talking that they allow on their free phones, and many of us call them the Obama phones. However, any of you can become an agent or a sub-agent of our organization and receive $10 per phone for each of your consumers who will qualify. And the way that I would describe it is everyone who has some type of low income status, whether it's Medicaid or EBT or something like that, they're already in the system. There is a phone with their name on it. And then it's just our job to make sure that they get that phone. Now, these phones will assist you like with your Zoom calls and also with their telehealth. So it's a really great way to be an income generating program. Now, the employment piece is that you can now offer this job. If you're getting $10 per phone, you can actually offer employment to consumers who just would need to do data entry on the phones. They can get like $6, $7, $8 a phone. So it's a great employment opportunity and income generating opportunity for your organization as well. And if you're interested, you can get your own web link where if someone clicks on it, and they have a phone delivered to their home, you would then get the $10.
Wow.
Can you put that in the, can you put in the chat how
Yeah,
to get a contact for that?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
that's wonderful. Excellent.
Great resource.
Yeah, I'd love to have anyone as a sub-agent. You can get started in 2 weeks.
Great. You can always, it makes you smile talking about wins. So, what else do we have?
I had raised my hand, if that's okay. Can I share screen? 'Cause I
Yeah.
want to show you something. Which is, I birthed this. Can you see the customized employment curriculum?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
We developed this for our State Department of Education, our Bureau of Rehabilitation Services, our Department of Developmental Services in 2019. And they kind of, no, 2018, I'm sorry. And they kind of sat on it and sat on it and sat on it and sat on it. And I happen to be looking at the Department of Developmental Services webpage, and I see that they're doing this for 4 2-week modules, which means that instead of picking and choosing from all of the materials that I had given them and all of the instructional strategies I had given them, they are apparently throwing in the kitchen sink, which means people are going to get 8 weeks of training, which means they're going to get everything that I could ever find. And again, it's the approach of customizing employment, but they will get ACRE certification because they worked that out. But this is, like I said, I birthed this, so I'm excited about it.
So it's an online
Wonderful.
ACRE.
You can look at it online. I just noticed they still neglected to credit us, which they really have to do because they
took it, but yeah, so I can put the link in the chat room if you want.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But yeah, it's just, you don't get rewarded very often for your labors, and then all of a sudden somebody will show you or have something come up, and I can't figure out how to get out of screen share now, so you're going to have to give me a second to do that, because then I can access chat. Here we go.
There you go. Thanks, Linda. All right. Excellent. Who's next?
This is Tamira White from the North Carolina Council on Developmental Disabilities, and I can go next.
Yeah, please do. Oh, did we lose you?
April to September.
Oh, you're going in and out, Tamira.
Oh. Mira, we're losing audio on you.
Assist.
Oh. Tamira, we're really having a hard time. You're just coming in briefly, so we're not getting that.
You could use the chat if it's
It was just
easier.
Oh. Not sure if you can hear us or not.
highly successful. We had over 700.
Hey, Tamira,
Uh-huh.
we can't hear you, hon. So
No.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe you want to put some of this in the chat. You're going in and out. And
No
so
problem.
we're only getting about one of every 20 words.
No problem. I'll just
on
put
internet.
Bummer. Anybody else want to jump in? All right, you guys are shy with victory. So we'll say.
This is Cherie from Georgia.
Hi, Cherie.
Julie already gave most of our report, but I do just want to add that we have been identifying our stakeholders and meeting with some of them and getting some things done. We've been busy.
Oh, good.
And we've also scheduled a meeting with the P&A advocates mentor, so that, you know, we're taking full advantage of all the resources that have been offered to us as well.
Excellent. Anyone else? Okay, everyone. Well, if you come up with something that you want to share, you can always drop it in the chat box. Because, you know, some of this conversation may spur some ideas for you or some memories of things that have just come up recently. And the thought today, I know we've been, let me share my screen again here. We've been down quite a path with you on project planning and trying to define kind of scope of what you want to accomplish with this community of practice. And I think, you know, the next thing, you know, I just was thinking a quick overview for you to think about where we've been so far. Some of you have been to all the sessions, that for those of you that haven't, I think this will give a little bit of context. We started out really talking about kind of the whole culture of competitive integrated employment, and we looked at it from a policy and a practice lens on both of those areas. And tried to give context to try and help shape the vision for your projects. And I think everyone's got a really good grip on kind of, what the big picture is around your effort and what you all can do to help with advancing employment in your states. Karen, I thought, did a really nice job last week talking about the change process and understanding it. And one of the things I left thinking about was, we have this saying that says you either change the people or you change the people when you're working on your employment efforts. And a lot of the work is going to be in changing hearts and minds and changing practicalities, with policies and practices that are going on. And really looking forward to digging into that a little bit more with all of you and seeing just how your projects take shape and what you run into, with the promise that it's going to be an interesting puzzle as you start putting it together. The work goes on with shaping your project goals. Thank you for jumping in on Mural and adding some things in there. We were working and looking at that over the last couple of weeks. And I think always looking and shaping what it is you're trying to accomplish is a really important thing, so that you can be really effective at knowing what you're getting done. We'll talk a little bit more about that today with a couple of other strategies and tools that I think will be helpful for your work ahead. We left kind of with the conversation about identifying your project stakeholders and some of the data design and tracking. And today we'll talk a little bit more about, working with the stakeholders and, helping to look at how we're going to use the team to move your project forward. So what we'll do for probably the next hour or so is we'll kind of take a journey here. We'll have some time to talk. I'll share some information with you, but always keeping an eye on, understanding how to lead our projects. We'll talk in and out of that conversation throughout the session today. And I'm going to focus a little bit and talk to you about project assumptions. So that's going to be a sharing that we do together, because one of the things I've learned with doing employment projects over the years is these are the things that can both guide you, your assumptions, they can galvanize your teams, and they can also get in your way. So we're going to spend a little time there and be an important conversation for us to have. And then a couple of tools about project milestones and communication. You might have some of those things already in your back pocket, ways you've done project work before. We'll offer you a couple other tools to take a look at and strategize with if they might be useful in this instance. So in terms of, I know, Cherie, you said, which was nice, that, you've been working on, gathering your stakeholders, and I'm sure all of you have had some effort into your project since we were together last. And I was, just so you all know, I'm a rabid baseball fan. I'm a former player, and I love this time of year because October's playoff time in baseball season. So getting out of the box is an old, for me, softball term, which is kind of after you've taken a swing at something, you got to get going and you got to get started on things. And we're really in that sort of space with our projects right now. And the way I've always talked about getting out of the box or thinking about forward movement and forward progress, this is about leading your teams and leading your projects. And I think a couple things for you to consider. Roles. And, as you engage these stakeholders, we got to bring them in and help define what it is that their role is going to be, and help them understand just what it is that we're asking of them, because that galvanizes a group to work together, builds trust, and builds on the wins and the successes that we want to have in these employment projects. Pace when you're leading these things, I think, is going to be really important. One thing you'll probably start to recognize with focusing in employment is that there's a lot of objections that'll come up around employment, or a lot of barriers that can be thrown in your way while you're trying to just think about all the variables that you need to tackle, or just thinking about the opportunities that you see and how to weave those into your project. Pace is going to be really important. Pace that's frequent and consistent, so that you're constantly moving forward, you're constantly chipping away at little pieces of the puzzle. Because the minute that we all stop or we all have other things come into our project effort, and we have priorities, you all have multiple things you're juggling in these jobs right now. But my point here is really to say, just try and keep this moving slowly and in a manageable fashion. I think Karen hit home really well about defining your goal and making it obtainable so that we weren't getting too big. But also now as that's getting defined, want you to nurture that, care for it, and keep it moving week by week, little bit by little bit. And the way I want you to do that is, one trick is this wins piece, is if you can, with your project team, whenever you meet, have a conversation about what's went well and what's gotten done on the project or the wins relative to your project, and write those down and keep track of them. It's kind of a little win sheet, right? This is the thing, sets the tone, and it also helps us notice and recognize what's really going on and what other people's perspectives are on our teams. And I think it's really important because some, as you know, some people that you're going to work with will be quieter and some will be more robust in their work with you. And I just think having an organizing principle about short-term successes is a really nice way to organize teamwork together.
I would add in as well that when it helps us to keep our project manageable, right? So when we do these really big goals, and a lot of you, I made comments on Mural, when we do these really big goals, there are no wins because the goal is so far away that we are not celebrating. We don't have anything to reflect on because we made the thing so big and so far in the future. That's, again, it's almost as small as you can make it, the bigger the win. So Linda's example was a perfect example. She spent how long creating that document? And then she spent how long with it in some sort of edit phase? And then somehow how long in the department? So had she had this as her goal back when she started, we'd be, like gray hair and, all that kind of stuff by the time it got implemented. The small wins, right, is create a structure for the curriculum. Yay, we did it. There's some wins there. That's why keeping the goal manageable so that we can win. The other thing is is that these systems are battleships. How many of you have really ever seen a battleship before? I mean, battleships are huge. Aircraft carriers, they're huge. They've got a runway on them. They're huge. And it takes a long time to turn a ship that big. It doesn't matter how good the captain is. It just physically takes a long time because there's so much that has to happen. But if you're on a little speedboat, you can go woo, and you can make a turn pretty quick. And so I just, again, this whole starting off with a dialogue about wins, you can only kind of do that if your wins, if what you've set your mind to is small enough that, and then you put the little ones together. It's like putting Tinker Toys together or building building Legos or something. You look at one Lego and you're like, oh, I've got all this to do to get to the Death Star I'm making. But if you start off by just making a little bit at a time, you can get there. So.
Yeah, well said. I think one of the other things that happens when you start to look at things this way too is that you're going to attract and generate energy, right? So part of the thing, I'll keep saying this, if employment was easy to do, we would have typical employment rates for people with disabilities across this country to the same degree as people without disabilities. We don't have that yet. And oftentimes it's for these reasons that Karen's talking about, is that we get lost. We just get lost in the massiveness of what needs to happen. And we each can do a little bit to move this forward right now. And that's what you're gonna keep hearing a theme here. Let's just keep moving. Let's keep chipping away at this. And suddenly we're going to have, I'm super excited for these projects because the places that you all work and the responsibilities that you have in the system, the DD network, but having a focus from your lens on employment can have a profound impact on what happens in our communities. And so that's why I wanted to be a part of this project and this process. Was your roles are super important and never more important than they are today in terms of the community and what the needs are out there. And so I'll keep being excited to be on this ride with all of you. Now, I also like to think these things. I like to think about success, right? That's what we're talking about here. We're kind of on our lane of what does it mean to succeed. And one of the things about project planning that I've often forgot or missed or didn't pay enough attention to is assumptions when I bring people together. And you're going to be asking key stakeholders to come together to support your project, and a few key stakeholders, not a ton, but it's going to be really important to have this conversation with them as part of your organizing your team. And so I wanted to practice that a little bit here in this group. And I want you to just, while I'm talking here, just think about this question, which is, what are some things, and I'll have you take a minute and write down 3 to 5 things that you expect to happen for your project to succeed. So things you expect to happen for your project to succeed. Chew on that for just a second and consider you be walking in and maybe wanting to say these things when you have some of your organizing meetings with your team. Take a minute and think about that. And then I want to have a little discussion about this because I want to hear what you're thinking. You're going to get a theme here. We're going to start making you guys talk a little bit more. Your expectations. My assumption, I'll kick us off, is that you're all going to have highly successful projects that are going to further employment in your state. I honestly expect that to happen. That's an assumption of mine. What comes up for you around your projects?
Are people feeling grounded in what they see as their project, or do we need to take a step back and talk through some of those? Talk through some of that.
That would be great if we could talk about, if you wanted to go one step prior to the assumptions.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Could we
Yeah,
go
we can do
on
that.
to the mural site and take one of these and talk through it? Would that be helpful for you? Who would be willing or want us to use theirs as an example? We have a visiting sea turtle there. Is that you, Seth?
I don't know. Let me see. I was just going to look. Hi, visiting sea turtle.
No, there you are. You are visiting lion, sea lion. Somebody else is a sea turtle.
I'm the sea lion.
Would anybody like us to take a look at theirs together as a group, and so we can talk through where we're at and use that? Here's the.
Take a look at mine. It's Kelly from ARI. Mine is the green box.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Okay,
You want me to share, Karen?
yeah, you know what I could probably do? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you want to share that? So Kelly originally had to meet with a legislator and discuss the creation of a stream of funding for disability hiring program for people ineligible for basically long-term funding, and to create a potential list of Howard County employers that could be outreach to the future, okay? And my response up here to Kelly is that I can really visualize this. I get what she's saying. It's really clear to me.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many people in right now. The only state that has a working waiver for adults with autism is Pennsylvania. And so there are so many people who fall through the cracks that in a state where they are not a part of the waiver, they can't get into mental health services, and they are, because of order of selection with VR, they're not even able to get into VR services. And so there's a group of people for whom her organization is geared to support that there's no funding options for them. And so she wanted to talk about, am I on par, Kelly?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
We've been doing like a trial type program specifically for young adults with autism, but the goal that we have listed on here is more of a broad sense where it's, people with disabilities just in general that don't either qualify or are, on that wait list. And I know from my understanding of things that are going on with DOORS, which
RVR.
Yes, for Maryland. There's a long wait list and there's a lot of issues with it being understaffed. Because of things with COVID and there are not enough funds and they're not being compensated properly. So there's a lot of things involved on the VR side, making it difficult for people to get services. So this is kind of just an idea of, trying to give people who aren't eligible or, won't be receiving those services at any time in the near future, another option.
Yeah. So Kelly's big vision here, right? The organizational vision here is that there's a funding stream to support people who tend to fall through the cracks of services.
Mm-hmm.
That's the organizational goal. That's not her project goal. That's the organizational goal. It's a great goal. It's clear, it's concise. And for her project goal is she's got to, they got to develop those relationships with legislators. They've got to,
Right.
they got to get themselves in there. So she's got to first start. I just so happen to live in the same place that Kelly does. Ironically, we didn't know each other beforehand. And I just happen to know the Secretary of the Department of Disabilities, who not only loves this kind of work that Kelly's talking about, but she also really loves to think creatively about how to support people that are outside of the traditional funding mechanisms, and know that she would help you lead this charge. I mean, she's a political appointee. She's a secretary. We're the only state that has that. So
yeah, and my director, Katie, who's usually on these calls, but had scheduling conflicts. She and I talked about this, and she also suggested Jade Gingrich, who is
works for Carol. Yeah, works
yes,
for Secretary Katie.
She's director of employment policy with under the Maryland Department, and I'm just figuring out or finding out where everyone kind of falls in there. So she said that might be an option as well as Secretary Beatty.
Yeah. So I would go right to
That's
the top
great.
in this one.
Okay.
You got it in.
Yeah.
She loves Howard County. She loves this topic. She would do a meeting with you. That's
Yep.
she's that
Okay.
she's that kind of person.
Okay.
And so I really like this idea of and think it's a really manageable. So you got to have your words right when you go to anybody though, right? So that's the project is we have to have concise literature. We have to have bullet points or a PowerPoint or something that's concise to share. And we've got to be clear on our ask.
Yep.
Right. And so your project is to get yourself prepared
Mhm.
to get in front of legislators and Secretary Beatty.
Okay. I'm writing it all down.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not looking.
Yep. So even though ultimately the big goal is to get this funding stream, our project in the way that we're going to take this apart is to start with a step.
Yes.
The first step. And we all have a lot of passion for what we're doing, but we're going to get a half an hour with Secretary Beatty.
Mhm.
She wants to know what's the problem, what's your possible solution, and what do you want me to do? Same with legislators. They're going to want that really clear policy information from you. Will you co-sponsor with us? Will you co-create with us? Will you help us to get some money in the budget with the governor, right? Real specific deliverables that you want them to help you with. So to me, that's the project.
Yeah. I need these three things. This is what, it's you've got to have those talking points down so that it's like really easy for you to just stare them in the eye, and then one page to hand over, so
Right.
that it's not too much there,
And there's no questions or information left,
And don't
out.
underestimate the amount of time something like that takes to do well.
Right.
That's a project that could
Absolutely.
take you 2 months to do something like that well.
Yeah, especially for me, I tend to nitpick a lot of things, so it will probably take quite some time for me. But that's
And-
very
boil
helpful.
it down, boil it down.
Yep. And maybe you want to get a couple of other people to help with you. I know that Sarah
Yeah.
Basehart would be more than willing to
Yeah.
sit on a committee and chat with you about it. She's another
Yes.
SIL director here in Maryland.
We have several SIL partners that I think would be great.
Yeah, right. The guy up at what's his name? Up
Image
in Bal-
Center.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mike Bullis.
yes, Mike. So
Yeah.
I think so got to put together the committee of people to help you, get the vision going, get a draft of this stuff going, finalize it, get your meetings.
Gotcha.
That could take 2 months to do.
Yes, no,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
It could take 5 minutes for me to tell you what needs to be done, but it could actually take 2 months to get it done.
Yeah.
I think that's that managing expectations, because you have other things to do in your job and
Yeah.
they all have other things to do. So
It's definitely feasible though, like you said, even, if it takes some time, that's something that can definitely be attainable within the next few months.
yeah,
Mhm.
I would also give you Andy Culp from the Arc of Maryland.
Okay.
She's very interested in this as well
Okay. Andy Cole.
as a possible committee member.
Okay. I appreciate this. I feel like I'm getting bonus because you're in the same state as me. So thank
Yeah,
you.
I know a lot of people in a lot of these different states too. So both Seth and I have worked all across the country. So
Thank
Yeah.
you so
That's
much.
a double agent.
yes,
Double
Yes.
agent process. Yeah. Yeah. Well, very good. That's exciting, Kelly. That's a really,
Yes.
these kinds of projects, when you're thinking about those legislative asks, can get really overwhelming too, because there'll be lots of competing interests right now, but just stay
Yes.
laser focused, right? Just you know, like Karen said,
Yes.
just really clear, really concise. And then repeat, recycle. It's going to happen
Yes.
again, right? So, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. And then the
Thank
next
you.
step, once you have learned how to use this process and these formats, then the next step is, okay, we're going to have to do some investigation in other states to see how they've done this, or we're going to have to come up with an actual piece of legislation. How do you write a law? How do you write a bill? And you might have to go ahead and do that. So those are step 2 and step 3 after you get step 1 project done.
Okay. I'm writing those down.
Nice.
Anybody else have one that they want us to play around with to see if we can make it so that we're ready to jump off to the next step?
This is Dave. Barry, I'm getting on here kind of late. I've been on for the last 10 minutes. I had another commitment. I wasn't sure if you had gone over to the disability law center section or have done that already with Abigail.
Nope. So which one is it?
It's the, I think you see my cursor, it's the Disability Law Center of Alaska.
Yes.
You're close to it.
Okay. Okay. So provide advocacy or other services that an individual needs to secure. Can you over to, there you go. Perfect.
There you go. Yep.
To secure, maintain, or regain competitive integrated employment and assist individuals in obtaining, maintaining, and retaining employment or advancing or being part of a job, right? So we're going to get that done in 2 months. Not. It's a great organizational statement. The you know, the 50,000 foot view. It's a great statement to start off with. And so what I talked about in my comments back to you was, and as well as Seth, is how do we get a first step out of here? What does that first step look like? What is the first project step that we're trying to do?
We added more specifics down below
Okay.
your comments, if that helps.
Okay.
We met and discussed and came up with a more specific plan.
Ah, there we go.
I just
Thanks,
added
Abigail.
it a little while ago, so
Okay.
if you haven't had a chance to look at
Beautiful.
it, that's totally fine.
Okay.
No, this is great. Let's take a look.
Provide information such as pamphlets. Okay. Are the pamphlets already made?
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
Yeah. So that's the granular level we're talking about here, is that level. So when you go through your project stuff, you want to have that's the projects that we're talking about. Provide information such as pamphlets or PowerPoint presentation to youth and families.
Which
So
we've
there's
got the
2
PowerPoint.
projects. Huh?
You've got the PowerPoint already.
Okay, you got a PowerPoint. Perfect. Enlist parents of 16-year-olds.
Actually, there's a parent that we are working with now, brand new to us as a client of the CAP program. And the 16-year-old, you know, is just starting to learn about this. And mom and dad are brand new. They don't know what to ask. So we've been helping them along. We thought it'd be a great perspective to have their input. What has worked so far for you on getting information? What else would you need?
Right. Those are great questions to hone that project in. Educate parents about the need to teach youth about independence and available supports, because parents don't live forever. Educate schools about the agencies that can help in the transition phase and what services are available. This information would be provided in a PowerPoint or handouts, right? That goes back up to your PowerPoint and pamphlets. And then you could run the presentation and then send out feedback surveys to parents. So I would like to, if you don't mind, David and Abigail, I would like to open this up and to everybody and say, when you look at this, how would you hone down this beautiful recommendation into a single 2 to 3 month step, so that nobody gets frustrated because we haven't done it all? So how would you how would you suggest it? Because I'm telling you, I know some of you on this call have already done this. You've already done this particular phase. I think Linda had a really great recommendation last time when we looked at her work. And Linda said, why don't I pilot it with 5 parents? I thought that was a really great idea, right? Is piloting something with just a few parents to see what they think. And maybe go through the process with just a couple parents first and get your feedback like you're doing with this one parent, but do it with maybe up to 5 parents.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, David, in terms of like a prototype, right? So that you're creating a prototype, and like Karen's saying, you're running that through a user group, basically, so that you can get feedback and you get experience with those things. Because that's, enlisting those parents, pick them out, and get that small prototype going. Because this is definitely something that you would do over time. Like you would run these things and you get more refined. So how do you kind of contain the experience to start with, so that you can get some of the wrinkles ironed out?
Is everyone jumping in? Are we?
Yeah, please.
Oh, okay.
Please.
Okay. All right. So if you are familiar with the Covenant House, this isn't a program that I did with my current contracting position, but when I was at Covenant House, which is all over the country, what we would do is solicit or recruit the parents with a parent night. Now with that parent night, we would do like a spaghetti night. Now, is this going to be online, or is it a hybrid, or is it in person?
Right now, unfortunately, it would have to be online because of the Delta variant, and the numbers are high here in Alaska.
Okay.
But David, your state is also huge, right? And it's not like getting in a car and driving from, one part of the state to the other. I mean, it's huge. So having a resource online like this, probably a really good idea for scaling anyway.
Yeah.
So, well, just to finish, what we did was we attracted the parents, offering resume building classes and some employment classes for the parents, and GED classes, just anything that would pull the parents in an online way. We have a culinary program that allows you to get your food handler's card, and just really focusing on the parents and any needs that they would have with the survey, just to say, in a community of schools philosophy, to say that we need to connect with the parent and to make sure that the parent doesn't have any food issues, any food insecurities, and we would have these food drops. Now, if it's all online, you could definitely offer like some resume building, some parent peer support, and then from that, once you solicit and they have an interest with themselves as well, then you can kind of pull them in a community of schools. Like, this is going to be a family-oriented project, and we really want to focus on the parents and their training, like a parent academy or something like that. Words and propaganda always help. Parent academy, parenting classes. If you have the budget, you can have them do online gift cards if they sign up. But then the peer support of the parents, any type of group support for the parents, they may not have had opportunity to do Zoom, but then just getting them in that environment first, creating a cohort of parents always would help.
Okay.
So some good ideas, but really that first step is, I think what Gina's saying is you got to have that, you know, some of Linda's idea. So you got to have the things developed, because Linda's already got that developed. So she's just talking about an implementation strategy, like in creating some sort of pilot or some sort of prototype. So you've got a first step where you've actually got to create the documents, or maybe your PowerPoint right now is good enough to start with. Maybe before you start creating anything else, if you already have this PowerPoint, maybe you just start with that. But you start with that PowerPoint, and then you have to do, I think what Gina, one of the things that was so compelling about what Gina was saying is that you had to have that hook. You got to have that hook to get parents involved. And so what is that hook that you're going to come up with, and then engage a small group of families to run this process with? So you gotta get some people together who are going to help you, right? You got to pull together a team of people who are going to help you. That's the first step, right? Who's going to help you? You got to figure out what's already out there. And your PowerPoint might be one of them, but there might actually be somebody else who already has some pretty good transitioning youth stuff. Maybe do some research and see if the you know, any of the schools have it, or if one of the parent training centers has stuff, or some of the transition things, or maybe even your DDA service, your long-term services, or your voc rehab might actually already have something that you could use as well, because you don't want to create something if something exists. And then create kind of this process. We're gonna have a 4-step meeting with these families. At the end of each step, they're gonna walk away with a tool to do something for the next meeting. It's like kind of homework to get them to come back. And then the next step is, after they go through those 4 steps, we're going to give them technical assistance to ask for services or whatever it is that you're trying to get them to do. And then the last step is to interview them or use a survey to say, how did this process go for you? What would you change in it? So you got to actually create that process. That's a part of what you have to do, is create that process. And I would do that with your team, with your steering committee.
Appreciate it.
Does that seem, is that helpful? We want to make sure, and I'm so sorry that we're not in the same room. And is this resonating with you, David, to help you move?
It is. It's in the beginning, Abigail and I were like, I'm not quite sure where we're going with this. It's starting to shape up in there, and the input from everyone, I really value it a lot. I've taken some notes here. And hopefully Abigail has too, because I know she can't read my writing.
Yeah, thank you. This has been very helpful.
Yeah.
We'll just keep working to narrow it down further.
Yeah.
Again, can I add one more thing? And that is, since it's the Disability Law Center, there are possibly going to be some training, some short workshops that you can hold. For example, we do benefits planning for people who are on SSI. And so what we teach them is how they can report income above their limits, or, you know, you have your limits per month. And this is something that everyone wants to know. They don't want to receive SSI and then they're working and they've gone over their limit. So if you were to put something out there to say, you know, calling our parents, would you like to know more about how you or how your children are, they're transitioning into adulthood, if they are receiving SSI or SSD. From a legal standpoint, would you like to know how you can report your income and not be, not jeopardize your SSI, your SSD? From a law perspective, that's something that someone, either you or someone, should know that information. And you could, hire a lawyer, or you wouldn't have that information.
Get your WIPA. Get your WIPA, the person who does benefits counseling, become, Gina is like obviously the master on how to fish. She's a fisherman.
Director,
she knows how to get it out there and reel those people in. Way to go.
Yeah. That's a great idea, because he's got all these different things pertaining to law that would affect people with disabilities and elderly.
Yeah.
Pull them in, find out who are parents.
A great way to bring them in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Super.
Thank you.
Anybody else? And I really appreciate anybody's feedback on these, because I think, when you helping other people think through them, it helps you ultimately.
Great suggestions. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Is anybody on from Total from Mississippi?
Yes, I'm on, as well as Tyler and Laura and Griffin. There's 4 of us here today.
Okay, perfect. Good. Do you want to take a shot at yours for a second?
Sure.
Okay, so they are also, I just did put a little comment on there for you to go back and look at, but and one of the things that's so interesting for me is theirs is very similar to Alaska, right? It's transitioning youth, but you're talking more about pre-ETs rather than advocacy. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like if I'm right, you're going to have a pre-ETs service, correct?
Right. We currently do now.
Oh, okay.
To make it a smoother process than it is, and make it more touch more students than we currently do now.
Okay, so you actually want to expand it, but what I'm seeing in what you've written though is more about family engagement and assessing what you're currently doing. Now, is that not accurate, or is that the strategy you plan on using?
And my colleagues, please chime in on this as well. Sure. I mean, we definitely want to continue that dialogue. We just want it to be smoother than it is currently. And also, we don't have a local, we have a campus here, but it's not like an actual center where people could come, to receive services here. So we go to the schools, and then currently, we provide pre-ETs through Zoom, but we were wanting it to be, we want to be more known, I guess, as a center of excellence for pre-ETs.
More hands-on kind of
say it again, Laura.
More hands-on.
Yes, more hands-on. So if we had something here on campus, we could actually do some, if we had the supplies, you know what I mean, to be able to do hands-on activities.
So I think we're getting closer. We're not quite there yet, so we're getting closer. So it's not really that you want an advisory council, it's that you want to expand your services to be in person on campus.
Yeah.
We want to keep providing to all the schools as well. We maybe be dreaming too big. I'm getting at.
We have a program that is at another school in campus, and we're trying to do something very similar to the students in this area. And so we're just trying to get, we're not sure of all the things that entails to being able to do that, but it's such a great program that we want to try to emulate that program in a certain way, and try to touch the kids that are on this side of the coast that are not currently getting that service.
Yes, and that service that Laura is referring to, they actually have, it's at a central location and they bring in teachers from the schools. We don't have that, that much staff yet to be able to do something like that. But we're starting small to at least make what we do more excellent.
So we've got to narrow you down, right? You've got this advocacy group, you've got some assessment, you've got the should we grow, should we not grow. So maybe one of the things that you want to do is a precursor to all that is maybe you want to assess the need first.
Oh, there's a need. Would you agree, Laura?
Yeah, we really think there is like a need because parents, we get calls all the time from parents that are wanting something like this, wanting those other services. And unfortunately on this side, there's just not that many options.
There are several barriers to giving and providing those kinds of services.
And I guess part of the reason why ours is confusing is if it can't happen, we still want to make efforts to improve what we are currently doing, if that makes sense.
I would not suggest for a minute that you can't make it happen. I think that if it's what you want to do, but this is about narrowing down what you want to do, what you're planning on doing. So let's talk about the chicken and the egg here, right? Would the parent advisory group or would an advisory group help you to make this decision?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So now we got somewhere. We got somewhere. So ultimately we want to be the biggest, best, brightest pre-ETS program in the state. Boom. That's the big vision.
Yes.
And the first step of that vision is we want an advisory group to guide us through how to do that.
Yes, correct.
Correct.
Okay. Does that feel good to you? Does that resonate with you?
Yes, we would be excited about working on that project.
Yes.
Okay. So we can have this great, big, bold vision of being the biggest, the best, the brightest. But what we got to start with is some people to help us, right?
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So, thinking about putting together a group of people, and I liked your representation here. You've got VR, you've got a parent, a teacher, a youth, an adult with a disability. You've got some self-advocates, right? You've got some people who are here that would make a good start to that. What do you want them to do?
Well, I mean,
now we're going to meet December 1st. What are we going to talk about?
Well, we definitely want to bring awareness. There needs to be more awareness about what even pre-ETS is, which you'll see that, I guess, in the second objective. We need help with bringing awareness, because a lot of the parents don't know what pre-ETS is.
Right.
We want better collaboration with teachers, VR, us as a provider, and the parents and the student. There just needs to be better relationship and collaboration between that whole unit.
So your goal is that this committee advises you how to create and assess those relationships.
Yeah, yes. I mean, that would help for sure. I just think as the awareness grows about what pre-ETS is, then they'll understand, the need for it. Because, so many times the students will find out, some even at the end when they graduate, well, I didn't know that these services were even there, and then they're graduated.
Yeah.
So start earlier.
So Beth, the thing I'm trying to get to here is you got a really nice big vision here. You've got something that you're absolutely right. But let's get off of that for a minute, okay? Because we're your believers, right? The people on this call, you don't need to tell us. We all know that the funding isn't right and the collaboration isn't great, and we all live through this. We all live through this. This is all a part of what our work is about, every person on this call. The question is, how are you going to solve it? And what you've said here that you'd like to do is you'd like to have this advisory committee to help you solve that issue in Mississippi. Okay, so let's not focus on the big issue. Let's focus on the first step. So what's the first step?
Can y'all help us with that? Because we don't know.
Yeah. So when I gave you last week, so let's get back to that presentation I did last week. You need a steering committee to help you get this group together. So maybe it's the people who are on this call. Maybe you also add in a parent at this point, or maybe you also add in a teacher, but you need a steering committee. It's not going to be this advisory committee. Maybe some of the members will stay the same, but the first step is to bring a group of people together, right?
Right.
So you place that vision, and the vision is that the total program will have a advisory committee to help us strengthen pre-ETs. That's the vision, right, for this project.
Yes.
So then the next step always, and that's why we always use that paradigm of the process. So the next step is you got to start bringing some stakeholders together. Who's going to help you to get this thing off the ground? What kind of person are you looking for to help you get this off the ground? Maybe there's a teacher, a voc counselor. I'm not talking about the people who are going to sit on your advisory committee. I'm talking about your steering committee that's going to help you through this project. Or maybe it is just the four of you that are on this call. But once you do that, then you got to start gathering resources and literature. How have other people on this call done it? There's other people who've done pre-ETs on this call. How about other places that do pre-ETs? Have you talked to them about that? Are there any other USEDs out there that have actually done pre-ETs programs, or that who else could we put you in touch with? And that's something Seth and I could even do, is we could help to find somebody who's successfully put a pre-ETs program together to get it, that you could ask questions of, right? About do you have an advisory group? How do you, what do you do with your advisory group? Then you've got to write some kind of plan, right? A plan about how you're going to recruit people, what you want them to do. How are you going to recruit them? Are you going to write up a pamphlet about this? Are you going to write up a PowerPoint to ask them? What are the steps that you're going to do to get these people on board? And then you're going to eventually ask them to be a part of the committee. And then boom, your project is done, and you go to the next project, which is now the advisory committee starts to do their work.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense to everybody?
It does.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has this helped people
things,
to kind of think through this way?
Yes, this was very helpful. I apologize. That was my phone.
It's all right.
Very helpful.
No
Thank you so much. Y'all are helping us to focus, and that's what we needed.
I think might be a natural segue, Karen, Beck. I've got a couple of tools for you guys that might help with focus too here, that I'll just share with you quickly. I know we've got about 15 minutes left here today, and few things. You can take this away and just think about coming back. Maybe we'll open up with things about success, what you think needs to happen for your project to succeed. When we get back together, that would be a great conversation for us to have after you think about that a little bit. So take that one away. Okay, and let's think about success while we're not together for the next couple of weeks. Let me see here if I can. I'm having one of those days where your computer runs like really, really slow for some reason. Okay, so next thing, Karen's done a really amazing job of helping you kind of narrow the starting point or the getting out of the box point. We're not going to dive into this today, but I'm going to give you this concept because we're headed here, which is the concept's called a bingo point. The bingo point's your halfway mark, okay, in your project. And so this narrows you even further. So before you talk about what's going to happen by the end and you really start mapping things out, you need to map out only halfway. Okay, so narrow, narrow, narrow. So you can go, all of these great examples we just talked about, you think about setting that mark. By the way, a bingo point's a running term, just so you guys know. This is my a subliminal comedy here for you today, which is, I don't know if you've ever just started a walking program or a sitting program or a running program or anything, but a bingo point would be once you went out or once you started, even in a meditation, it's the halfway point. You make a mark, like you have some sort of a note on the paper or a note on the calendar or a note on your watch or a note on the trail. And when you go down that trail again, you'll never probably hit the same point halfway because you will have done it already one time. And when we're talking about this is making these marks and making these standards that you're going to create in this project, because likely you're going to do these things again or something similar to this. Never one and done project when you start down this path. So I'll leave it at that, but just think, we're going to have you think about halfway points, okay? I gave you a couple of tools, or Karen and I did, sorry, in our email to you. One was this grid. This is a communication matrix. Many of you might have a communication tool already that you use. This is just another example for you to take away. But when you're thinking about the activities in your project, okay, you'll get this PowerPoint. You can see this is an example of, a project communication plan where you're thinking about what you're reporting on, you're thinking about what you're presenting, you're thinking about the announcements piece or the outward facing communication of what you're going to do. You think about the communication around your bingo point. And that's often, the bingo point and team morale are two things that often are missed in these types of projects because we get hyper focused on getting stuff done instead of making sure everybody feels like they're having a really great time and they're being successful at this work. Huge miss in these kinds of projects when we're not actually, I'll go back to wins, when we're not frequently and often thinking about what we're getting done on the short term, so that you can build and build and build on your success. I promise you in working on employment that if you're coming from a place of success and excitement, you're going to attract all kinds of people that you're going to need to help you to make your project go or to sustain what you've already started. And as you see, you guys have these huge visions. It means you're going to be at this a while. So you want to think strategically about always building morale and always having these short-term wins so that people feel like they're contributing. Okay, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it's something for you to look at and digest, and we sent you the template for you to start to work in and to see what you might need in terms of your project communication. Any questions on that? Okay, it's pretty straightforward there. This next template that we sent looks like this, and it's a roles and responsibilities matrix. I am a big fan of this. Karen had just talked to you about key activities, narrowing your goal, getting your key activities listed. So if you could just do a simple list of 5 to 10 activities, left-hand column, when you're going to do them, and then we look at who's going to be responsible for these things. There's 4 ways to identify people working with you and for you on these projects. They're either leading the task, they could be leading and accountable for the task, They need to be consulted, or they need to be informed. And it's really important to think about these key stakeholders you're bringing in. I'll go back here. And thinking about what role you're giving them. You're going to want people that you consult with. You're going to want people that you keep informed, because they just are in the need to know group. They are key stakeholders, whether they're actually doing work on your project or not. Oftentimes projects get derailed because someone wasn't in the know, especially when it might be something new that you're trying out that you might not have done before. Little less touch sometimes on something you've done, and if your project's refining somewhere you've been, that those projects, if you guys are starting out brand new with a concept, you want to have a good conversation about who needs to be informed. They might not be a decision maker, but they could be a key ally in your effort to succeed in this project. So we call this RACI, R-A-C-I, and it's basically your assessment of how you're going to use all of your strategic assets, your human capital, right, on this project. Questions or thoughts about this piece? Really an inventory. Okay, it's an inventory for you as the project leaders. So a couple tools for you: communication, roles. Roles. Those are super important to identify so people feel like they can be successful too in working on your project with you. The last thing, just to give you a little bit of send off today, I've got this friend who's Canadian, and she has this saying called "give it the gears," or giving you the gears. It's kind of one of those slight comments about having a good time or giving you maybe a little bit of a hard time in a funny sort of way. But I use it this way in my project management stuff, project development. I think about these three things always. If I think about nothing else, I think about the team that I'm on being creative. You can be super creative if you know what your role is. So being really clear around role clarity, and always going back to what is success on these projects. What is it going to look like? Because sometimes if you have that success conversation, I assume these things are going to happen, it can help you narrow what it is that your starting point is, or your getting out of the box point. And we're kind of in this formative stage right now still on these projects. So really thinking about different ways to get after definition of what your goal is. These are a few tools and strategies that can be very helpful, this conversation about success. I'll just stop there for a second and see what comes to mind, or thoughts or questions anyone has about that. Any of these three things I just talked to you about.
Seth, would you say that the tool where you have people's names on, can you go back a couple slides?
This one?
Yeah. Would this be a good tool for them to start putting their steering committee on and other people?
Yes. That would be perfect.
Yeah.
To do that.
So can you put people other than steering committee members? Because I really liked what you said. I know that in my organization, Jessica always raises her hand, and I keep saying to her, girl, you have got to start putting your hand down. You may need to know about what's happening, but you don't need to be on it. So
absolutely,
we could designate the difference between people who are actually on the committee or on the steering committee for the project, and people who you just got to keep up to date.
Yes. And really, you all can manipulate the columns about the stakeholders. Those are kind of just placeholders, so you can identify who somebody is, right? And what they're doing on your project. So
and remember last week I said you want people who are interested and influential. You don't want to get somebody who you want to make interested. You want somebody who's already interested.
Yes. Great point. Other comments, thoughts, questions? I want to emphasize too on the communication planning piece for your projects. If that is not a step to miss. That's a step that's very important in thinking about strategically how you're going to communicate what you're doing. Whether the communication only needs to be with the 3 people you're working on the project with, or whether you have other circles of influence and accountability that are important on your project. I think just being clear together about how often you're going to communicate, what you're going to communicate, what tools you're going to use to do that. It is an important step to not miss, because sometimes we get out over the front of our skis a little bit and we get started and communication breakdowns start to happen, and then we get derailed. You know, we get stalled, or we lose effort and energy, and people start to question what we're doing, especially when you're doing creative work, when you're doing innovative or creative work, because you are prototyping, you're modeling, you're piloting a lot of new things. You're trying something like the legislative ask. When you're trying a new idea that's super important, you need to have very clear understanding of how you're going to communicate and take the time to do that. It will set you free. I promise you on that. I think the other thing, and I'll keep asking this as we go along, is does everybody know their role? There's nothing worse than leaving a new exciting thing and going, that was really cool and I have no idea what I'm supposed to do right now. Okay, so think about that. Think about the comfort that you give for people by communicating well and also by being clear. Those are going to be really important. You get those things down, we get out of the box, we get going, you just start adjusting them, right? Then you're just managing adjustments. You're not managing and restarting and going back and starting over again. So we don't want to minimize false starts here as much as we can. And they will happen, and they won't be the end of the world, but we're going to try and minimize that a little bit as we go forward. So a few things here till we see you again, okay? Try and identify your bingo point, okay, in the project, whether that's a date and a description or just a date. That's okay too, but kind of say, here's where we're going. You've got your framework from us about 3 months, so kind of go out in there and say, where are we going to be? Okay, so get your marker down. And I want you to try and take a stab at the roles and responsibilities matrix and some sort of a communication plan. Okay, there's a tool there for you to use if you want, but start thinking and working on how you're going to communicate, and start thinking about what roles you're going to put on this, your key stakeholders and your key team members. Okay, and remember, they don't have to be actionable people. They could be just people to keep informed and consulted there for you. Okay, always nice to have somebody, a phone a friend that you consult with on things, and that very much could end up being in this group that you all lean on each other, because some of you had some great ideas for each other's projects. So think about that too. How do we use this group in a way where we can help each other build these things? Oops, hold on, I'm gonna stop sharing here. We're getting close to the bottom of the hour here. So any questions, comments, final thoughts?
Will you give feedback on some of the stuff that appeared there while you were helping other people, like you did last time?
Yeah, we can go into that. Yeah. Do you like that mural format? Okay.
Great. I sure like seeing it I checked it during the week. So if you guys are putting things in there and making adjustments and things, we are looking at it, just so you know.
Good.
And that link is live.
I like the color. It is live.
Link is live, so.
It's always fun. I go, oh, something new's in there. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're going to share the slide of the bingo part, the bingo points.
We're going to give you the whole slide deck.
Okay.
So
yeah,
you'll have the whole thing. Yeah,
All right.
We'll send that out. You bet. Like I said, with the forms and things like that, just, you know, amend as it makes sense for you. It's a starting point for you there.
Okay.
Make them your own. Okay. Well, keep up the good work, gang. I think we're together, what, in 2 weeks?
Yep. 2 weeks.
Again? Okay. Thanks for all of the good conversation today. And it's nice starting to get to know everybody a lot better. And we'll continue to start to work together more when we come on board.
And don't hesitate to email us, either of us, if you have any questions or you want us to think through any of the specifics. Great. Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
everyone. Have a great
See you
rest of your
later.
day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.